Thank you so much, and welcome everybody to the Cyversity community engagement today. We are very, very happy to have you. So on behalf of the DC chapter and the leadership team, I'd like to welcome you all to our panel today. We're going to have a wonderful engagement, hearing from our minority leaders, their stories, share questions with them, and get to know them very closely. Gada Ijam is going to be our moderator, so I'm going to go ahead and just turn it over to her so that she can take it away.
Great. Thank you, Nida. And hello, everybody. And thank you for joining us late in the afternoon if you are on the East Coast time, or maybe midday if you are on the West Coast. But super happy to have you all here. We have a really rich panel in terms of their experiences and backgrounds and insights and wisdom. So super excited to be the host. And hopefully I'll be able to ask them really hard questions and make them sweat. Without a lot of details in terms of my background, just quickly, I am the CIO for the Federal Reserve System. I'm going to start with a small factoid, which I'm going to ask the panelists to provide their factoids about myself, something that nobody knows about me. Lately, I decided to pursue sailing lessons because I love to be on the water. Sailing is so peaceful, and most of the time I would be riding on a boat with somebody else driving, and I decided, okay, what the heck, I'm going to go try driving the boat myself. So pray for me and wish me luck, and hopefully I will survive the lessons and get to enjoy sailing. So with that said, I am going to start with the first person I can see on my right-hand side. Umar, hello, good to see you. Please introduce yourself. Tell us about your background and yourself, but also give us something that's interesting about you that nobody knows about.
There's not much interesting about you, but first of all, I'm really happy to be here. I'm grateful to be a part of such an illustrious panel. A little bit nervous. I look at Professor Roger White, Brian, and you, Gada, and I'm just really excited to be amongst you all. So first of all, first and foremost, I want to say thank you to Dr. Nida Davis, Abby, and the entire Cyversity crew in Washington, D.C. I am just really grateful, and I'm just in awe. In fact, spent a lot of time thinking about it, so I'm not going to go too long, but I just really wanted to acknowledge and say thank you, because not only did you see the vision and did you have the vision for a need, but you took this next step in bringing us together to hopefully have a conversation that will inspire us to be the best versions of ourselves. So with that, I'll quickly tell you a little tidbit about myself. I grew up in Jamaica with very strict parents. And throughout my career, I think my career actually started when I was a young child, when my parents gave me my first task. And they would always give me things that were almost impossible to do, but they were achievable. So if you know me, you probably know this, but I'm a driven person. I'll push you. I'll push myself. I hold myself to a very high standard. And that's just really how I operate. Grew up in finance. I've been from, an analyst all the way up to a CFO level. I've also had the privilege of owning my own business. I chaired a non-for-profit board. I've even had run-ins with the law at a very young age, which taught me some very valuable lessons that continue to shape the way I live and operate and do things. But today, in my current role, I act as a cybersecurity risk advisor to Fortune 100 companies. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Story about myself. I don't know. I'm really fascinated with this thing called AI. So I've committed to watching a documentary or reading a book for the next 30 days to just really learn about AI and see how it's going to impact and shape the way we live, work, and raise our families.
Great. Clearly the driver in you is showing up in your factoid also. You're driving yourself to learn AI. That's wonderful. Thank you, Umar. Very good to be in your company today. Professor Roger White, please introduce yourself and share with us a tidbit about you that nobody knows.
Yes, so I'm Professor Roger White. I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York, right? And I transitioned into cybersecurity. I was an accountant, totally different field. And unfortunately, my personality didn't fit that job, right? And, I was miserable. Somebody introduced me to IT, and, I've been in here ever since, been in IT for about 20 years. Love it. I love it. I love the field. I love the passion that people have for it. I love how one day you're, the smartest person in the world, right? You know everything. You think you're like, you can't get any smarter. Then the next day, that whole technology is gone. And now you got to learn all over again from scratch. Right. So I love that. Right. There's always a level playing field, right, when new technology comes out, and it's always ever changing. So I'm a cybersecurity architect, right, for Microsoft. Brian and Anita, we all work, right? We all work at Microsoft is huge, so it's not like we on the same floor with each other, but we all work for Microsoft too. Very, very huge company, very complex. And also what I do on the side, my passion project, I guess, is to help others transition into cybersecurity also, right? So I dedicate a lot of time and a lot of resources to help people get into cyber. When I started, it wasn't that complicated, right? Actually, there was no word called cyber, right? So, but now today it's very complicated. Umar talked about AI, right? I mean, it's very complicated today. Where do you go? Where do you start? So I dedicate a lot of time to do that. And yeah, that's me.
That's wonderful. And thank you for being here. And yes, Microsoft is a huge organization, and congrats because your earnings came out this week and it seems like you guys are doing well.
Yeah,
so congrats for that. Perfect. Brian, please introduce yourself and tell us something interesting about you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. Really appreciate being invited and looking forward to our future discussion. I have been at Microsoft for a while, about coming up on 20 years. So it's been a journey. I've had a couple of different roles in the company. Kind of interesting tidbit is the person that hired me into the company is also the person that I work for now. But through the years, we went different paths, and then I'm working back for my manager, who's the Chief Information Security Officer at Microsoft. So I'm one of the security managers in his team, and focus on architecture, strategy, assurance, red teaming, pen testing, and automation, and we also set standards for the company for security. So it keeps us a little busy, keeps us very active, but it's also one of the things that I just love about the company, and also about the job is, as Roger mentioned, the industry is always changing, so it's always interesting. New challenges come up, and get to learn, constant learning, which is always fascinating. And I think that's why I continue to just love the job and love what we do. I guess a tidbit for me, I graduated as a mechanical engineer, had no intention really of getting into computers or computer security. It wasn't even a thing at the time. And by way of, I guess, good fortune, opportunities just arose, and I took advantage of those opportunities because I thought they were interesting, followed my kind of passion and interest, and eventually wound up in the security industry. And so it's been a very interesting ride along the way, and definitely a lot of learning. Had the opportunity to be a consultant, had also the opportunity to be a director of security for a financial firm, Charles Schwab, before I joined Microsoft. Also did a stint of me running my own business as a consultant, and decided, wow, that's way too much work, too much stress. And then Microsoft came calling, and they were looking to augment their security staff a long time ago, and I jumped at that opportunity. Yes, and another interesting tidbit that most people don't know about me is my character was written into a best-selling novel, or my name's in there as a character. Had the chance to consult with Michael Connolly, a best-selling author, and he wanted information about information security, and was able to meet with him along with a group of my coworkers that I worked with, and as a thank you, he wrote each of our characters into his novel called Angel's Flight. So, show up kind of in the middle of the book, but it's just a fun fact.
That's amazing. That's awesome. Thank you, Brian. So, Satya Nadella says, don't be a know-it-all, be a learn-it-all. And clearly each one of you has that passion and sort of desire to continue to learn and continue to develop. And Professor White, I totally agree with you. IT is the best and coolest place to work at. Because there's always change in technology, there's always a new problem to solve, and there's always something else to learn. So a very exciting field and a very rich field. And like many of you, I stumbled into IT myself, did not have it in my plans. I'm not gonna tell you how old I am, but when I was growing up, computers did not exist until a little bit into my university years. Those big fat PCs started to show up. So super excited to be, sharing the screen with you today. Professor White, I would like to pull a thread that you mentioned, that one of your passions is to start encouraging people to enter into the technology and the cyber field, looking at that field from the outside, especially with people that may have not studied and went to technical universities, is scary. However, some of the most successful people in IT are people that did not necessarily study computer science. Some studied art, some studied music, some studied political science, some are lawyers. I mean, there is a variety of profiles that end up in IT. So help us understand, what is it that you do? What's your secret sauce in encouraging people to enter into that field? And more specifically, minorities and women as they aspire to enter into that field.
Right. So I think the first thing is to level set what the playing field is now. Yeah, when I got in IT, it was let's say 70-80% technical, right? You really had to be technical to get into the field then. Now things have changed, right? We have threat intelligence. I mean, we have these whole, I'm just talking from cybersecurity, right? We have all these things that don't involve technology, so to speak, like risk management, governance risk, governance, compliances. So I tell people that people are trying to transition, you don't have to be a coder, right? There's kind of a myth that you have to be a coder because, they see the hacking movies and they see Angelina Jolie coding and they're like, oh my God, right? No, you don't have to be a coder. You don't have to be an engineer, right? You don't have to know how to fix and break computers and all that stuff, right? There's parts of cybersecurity and IT that we need people that are thought movers, right? That know how to write policy and do audits and risk, and those are a very big part of IT that has been overlooked. Documentation, right? So there's a big part of IT and cybersecurity. I say 95% of cybersecurity is GRC, is governance, risk, and compliance. Why we have technology is because of those regulations, right? So, I mean, those security solutions are very expensive. Companies are not just going to spend millions just because they think it looks cool. They're going to do it because there was some regulation either from government or the industry that said you need a firewall and you need firewalls here, right? And then it's our job to implement that and to enforce that or make sure the company complies to those regulations. So that helps a lot, especially on women, right? Because you guys are told that this is a real technical thing and women can't be in here, right? And so I tell them, no, it's not as technical as you think, right?
Yeah.
So
that's a very good insight, Professor White. It doesn't have to be a technical skill that introduces you into the field. And when you enter, then you start learning the technical, from my experience, the attitude and the aptitude for learning is the most important asset that a person can bring to the table. Technology is easy to learn. It's that willingness and open-mindedness to learn that's really important. So that's a really good advice. Umar, any other advice from your side, as you watched people enter into the field or maybe mentored people to enter into the field? Any tidbits from your perspective?
I think, when I work with a lot of people who want to get into the cybersecurity space. Some of them are in technology. And one of the things I always tell them is, okay, so here's a mnemonic for you. Take it and do whatever you want to do with it. It's tech, right? It's easy to remember, right? So tech, first you have to, make sure you have the trust factor is there. Be true to your words. When you talk to people, have the integrity, right? When you say something, make sure you follow through. When you interact with people, instill trust in those people. So that's the T. The E is executive presence. Can someone look at you and say, is this person worthy of being here, right? Should this person be here? Whether it's an executive or it's a line worker, whomever, right? You should be able to command a presence where people want to hear what you have to say and want to interact with you on that level, personal level as well as a professional level. And then the C is confident. Are you confident enough to deliver your message, to interact with folks? I don't care if you're a woman. You kind of said something that you in your previous conversation with Roger, people may be left with the thought that women aren't technical. That's not true, right? So let's just be clear that I think men and women, it's an equal playing field. Men just happen to be in the right place at the right time, and there just happens to be more men. It's just right. So are you confident? And finally, I think humility. I think you alluded to this, Scott, when you said, you don't have to be a know-it-all, but always remember, Roger said this at the beginning as well. Stuff is going to change. The rug is going to be pulled out from you at any time. So forget the technical stuff. You don't need to know how to spell SQL, right? But you need to bring yourself to the table, and you need to have that drive to be willing to work. So again, my mnemonic that I use is tech, right? The T is for trust, E is executive presence, C is confidence, and H is humility.
Great. I love that. I'm going to put that as a poster in my office, in addition to the poster of Believe from Ted Lasso.
Yeah. Umar, I posted it in the chat for everybody.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Umar. That's a wonderful insight. Brian, what's your trick? I think you're on mute.
You're on mute, Brian.
There's no meeting that goes by without saying you're on mute.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm going to be using the tech mnemonic going forward. That's for sure. That's awesome. Similar to what others have mentioned, I think for people trying to get into the security industry, it's a wide swath, lots of opportunity, lots of areas for people to apply their skill and passion. I think a lot of this is for somebody that has the motivation to think about where do they want to go, and being clear about that. Microsoft and the people that we've hired, and I've personally hired, that have done really well is, they spent some time, they talked to others in the field, they understood what they wanted to do, they were very clear about that, and we hire on potential and the ability to learn and adapt, and also being very clear not only in what they want to do, but also how they communicate and how they articulate both a problem and solutions to a problem, which is, in technology, as we all know, is super critical. And I think that is probably the skill that I still, in my organization, that I still can't get enough of, is people being concise, clear, and very transparent about what the problems are, so that we can make progress on them. So those would be my tips.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Brian. And by the way, there is another part of the chats for the attendees that's not the chat that I think we're typing in. So let's make sure we chat in the right place. I do want to pull, Umar, thank you for highlighting the fact that, Professor White did not mean women are not qualified for tech. I think everybody is as qualified. I believe what Dr. White was intending to say is sometimes women don't have the confidence. And I cannot tell you how many times somebody comes to me with a sort of an opportunity, and I would pause and say, do I have all the skills that are required for this opportunity? And I had the hard lesson one time where I rejected an opportunity, and 6 months later, I took that opportunity and I was the best achiever in that role for the organization. So I think that's a very important point. If we have women on this call, trust yourself. You do not have to have 100% of the qualifications to jump into the role. Take chances, take risks, have faith in yourself. And a lot of people are gonna help you and support you and provide you the scaffolding that you need. Just ask, and there will be plenty of people that will jump in and help. So thank you for highlighting that. I appreciate it. Now, career progressions are never easy. We will run into challenges and adversities or missteps or backsteps. Any one of you, I'm going to open it up without picking on you in sequence. Any one of you would like to share a situation that you faced, which is a situation of a challenge or adversity that could have impacted your career progression, and how did you handle it? And what advice do you have for others on this call?
I'm known for having a big mouth. I think, Professor White, you were saying something, so I'll go back on mute and then you get off mute and talk. So go ahead. You're still on mute.
Oops, sorry. No, you go ahead. You go ahead first. I'll go after you.
Yeah, so I think it's something I've thought about this, and I have it's a nuanced answer, because it's an ongoing thing. To me, the question of overcoming that challenge is something that I encounter probably on a daily basis with my clients, with my colleagues, with my partners, with people who I do business with. I've had multiple conversations at the very top of the food chain, the CEOs, about leadership and how do we have a representation of your leadership team, not the folks in your organization and below, but people who report directly to you, right? How do we ensure that we have that level of representation across the board, that representative of society and in some cases our customer base? And I've heard answers such as, well, we're pipelining people at the entry level folks, or I've heard one leader said leadership is proportional. And I pushed him on it. He said, well, what I mean by that is the amount of employees that are at the that are in the company should have that representation of leadership. And he kind of went off onto a different tangent. And honestly, I don't remember what the rest of his question was, but it's very challenging. And for me personally, I think here's a small anecdote. Like, I have faced challenges as a leader myself where I made significant attempts to diversify my leadership team. That includes Blacks, women, Arabs, Indian. And 2 weeks ago, the executive team and I were talking, and one of the women said, something, 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 boys club. And I was taken aback. And so we'll have a conversation sometime next week about it. But the point is, I think the point I'm trying to make is, I think it's a very nuanced thing. Sometimes leadership may have the right intention, right? They may include you, or it may be a diverse group. They may include you, but you don't have equal, you just don't, there's not equality there, or you don't have a sense of belonging. So it's something that I've experienced, something that I've been, perpetrated myself. So I wanted to share that, to say that I'm very outspoken when it comes to, having people. I don't like the word minority because it has connotations. So I prefer the phrase underrepresented sectors of the population. And I'm very bullish on it, but I was perpetrating it myself. So it's a challenge that I don't have the answer to, but I just wanted to share that little tidbit to say, even though sometimes you may try, or leadership is trying, we have to hold ourselves accountable, and we have to continue to push leadership, because you may have people on your team, all of us on here, we're but some of us may have more talking time, or some of us may in positions where we're shutting others out.
Omar, thank you for being honest and transparent about the situation that probably you encountered, where you were the person that's causing that uncertainty and doubt around the diversity of the team. I think that's a very important point, that no matter how much you try, sometimes you may get it wrong, and having that humbleness to listen and course correct after you listened is very important for leaders, to create the environment that encourages everybody to come and participate and feel included. So I appreciate that perspective. Who's next? I think Dr. White, you were jumping in before Omar, so you were gracious to allow him to speak. Would you like to add more?
Oh, yes. What was, you said, the adversity, right, that we faced? Of course, COVID, that was very interesting from a tech standpoint, because we've been talking about remote work and remote technology for decades, right? And it always get laughed at your face, or, let's talk that later. And then COVID happened, and then monies that they didn't have and all that just showed up, and we all went remote, and the world didn't end, right? Workers didn't go wild and have parties and vacation because they're all home. Right? Everybody did work. Actually, they did more work. It's arguable. They was more productive, right? During a very bad time, right? So that was one. Another adversity I felt happened to me was that I lost my job. I lost plenty of jobs, but this one hurt me the most because I thought I was irreplaceable, right? I thought I was the god of the job, right? And so in doing that, I didn't study, I didn't keep my skills up, I didn't learn new technology. The company was the same way too. The company didn't advance, and so when they laid us off, right, thousands of us, because of some merger, right? The company has a great name, so headhunters was coming to us, and I went to an interview, and I remember the guy said to me, he said, "Wow, this is what your company is working with? This is 10 years old, right? Unfortunately, your skills, we don't use that here." Right? Like it was old technology. We should have advanced, but we didn't, because I kind of found out later that right? When you do a merge and acquisition, you don't want to spend money, right? You want to keep your stock price high. So they didn't spend money to upgrade, right? Because they knew they was going to be bought out, right? That happens all the time. But, you know, I wasn't prepared. I wasn't prepared financially. I wasn't prepared in my career, right? I guess spiritually and mentally, I just wasn't prepared, and it hit me hard, right? And you know, so now I always am prepared. I always study. I always on top of things. Like Umar mentioned AI, right? I'm always on that because I don't want that to happen again, right? And it will. We'll get laid off, right? There was a massive layoffs. 300,000 people been laid off this year in tech alone. So it happens, right? But this time I'll be prepared. No,
That's wonderful. Yeah, thank you. So if I can summarize some of the key nuggets that I heard from you, Dr. White, one is don't be stale in your skills. Always refresh your skills, whether your company is teaching you or not. I think we all owe it to ourselves to continue to invest in our selves and in our learnings and ability. The other thing is, you know, I think indirectly, which I feel the same way, a lot of our identity is tied to the job, right? So when we all lose our jobs, and each one of us probably lost a job throughout our careers at least one time, you know, it hits the ego, and recovering from that hit is really important because you need to stand up on your feet and go forward. So that's a very important lesson. And the third is be prepared financially. Stuff happens, whether it's COVID, whether it's a layoff, whether it's some change in the economy and the market. Always have a plan B and a plan C and a contingency. And I think COVID was an interesting event that impacted all of us, but it also taught us a lot of lessons that probably we will carry forward in the next 10 years. So I appreciate that insight. Brian, any adversity lessons learned that you can share with us?
Yeah, I think great nuggets of wisdom that have already been shared. And definitely the contingency plan, it seems like it's one that we definitely need to have and can benefit from. And I think often probably we don't feel like it's needed, but you know, it's exactly when we don't think it's needed, it winds up being the most valuable for us. Yeah, so I've had a couple of adversity types of experiences through my career. You know, one of them was I also had the experience of being laid off from a company, and super stressful time, and it causes, you know, a lot of doubt and rocks your confidence and kind of shakes your foundation because you take it personally. And how can you not take it personally when you're being let go from a position? But you know, you also have to try to take it in perspective of it is a business decision, it's not personal, and try to accommodate that. You know, I think the way to get through those hard times is like look for the opportunity and invest in yourself, and also you know, be willing to learn and learn from it. It's all about, like, life is a journey. It's not intended to be a straight line. It's not perfect, and part of the journey is the ups and downs, and looking back on it, like, those are, even though there were stressful times, there were times where I grew, you know, an immense amount in a very short period of time. Got to meet a large variety of other teams and groups because I was on a timeline to find another position as fast as I could, and it forces you into some, you know, uncomfortable areas. So, you know, when those upheavals happen, it's, you know, again, stressful, but I also think about the opportunity, and also there's some excitement about the change. We try to now embrace the change when those situations occur. You know, then I've also had some, you know, Microsoft have had the opportunity to work on many programs, many of them big successes. There's also some that were not successes and went the other direction. And there's a lot of learnings that occurred on those. And it's kind of similar situation, like be humble, take the time to swallow any sort of pride you might have and really dig in and understand like what went wrong and how, if I had to do it over again, what could I have done different? If it was my decision that caused this thing to go the wrong direction, I'd really take the time and seek input from others, like what can I do different, or how can I learn from that going forward? Like I just encourage all of us to embrace the opportunity to learn and grow from our experiences.
Great, thank you, Brian. Sorry, I was looking for the mute button. I was looking at the chats to see if there are any questions coming through. I appreciate that, and I think there again the thread and the theme is be prepared. Deal with it with humbleness, but also use it as a learning experience. And I totally agree with you, Brian. Sometimes when adversity happens, you get to meet people that you probably have never encountered in your life, and they become the best people that you hang out with, after that adversity happens, because they show their true self and true colors and authentic self as they're supporting you through that journey. So really, really good insight. Thank you. I appreciate that. The last question I have, and maybe then we open it up to the community. I think there's having the leadership team and the teams within our organization be a representation of the communities that we live in and work in is a mission for many of the organizations. So everybody is working on it. Everybody is approaching it in a different manner. Some are successful, some are miserably unsuccessful. So as leaders in your fields, as leaders in your organizations, I want you to look at that question from two vantage points. Vantage point one, as a leader in the organization, what are you doing to help encourage the representation in the organization to equal and mimic the representation in our communities? And then from an outsider looking in, what advice do you have for people coming into the organization in terms of how they show up and how they represent their voices and themselves, and make sure that the environment that they're walking into is encouraged and continue to evolve into an inclusive environment? Again, I'm not going to pick on anyone. When you're ready to jump in, feel free to jump in.
I'll jump in.
Please
I like
do.
to get myself into trouble. So I think one, in terms of internally, I kind of shared, some internal dynamics that I'm currently working through in my organization. But one of the things that I think is really important is creating a safe space for people to be able to voice their concerns, voice their opinion, even though you may not like it. Critical. People have to be able to come to work or show up as who they are with their opinions. In a lot of cases, you may disagree with it, but they have a right to their opinion. And sometimes that opinion, even though you may disagree with it as a leader is actually the right decision. So I think creating that safe space for people to show up and to thrive and to, contribute. It's an amazing thing. There's studies out there, and I'm sure you've heard this millions of times, but the more diverse an organization is, there is a direct correlation in terms of your earnings and your stock price and all those financial metrics that are important to the market, and the diversity within your group. Not only diversity, but equity, inclusion, and belonging. I think if we just focus on those four letters and ensure that people are able to show up and be a part of conversations. A book that I would recommend is by a gentleman by the name of Ray Dalio. It's called Principles on Leadership. And I think he takes that to the nth degree in terms of, being able to communicate with your leadership, regardless of where you are in the organization. So that's my first one in terms of, internally. I love acronyms, so I'm going to drop another acronym. I think, from an outside perspective, I would say show up with your best self. So the acronym that I'm using now is called BEST, right? First, you have to believe in yourself. And I don't mean like phony belief. You literally have to believe that, yes, I can do this. I am supposed to be here. And you know what? You fake it until you become it, right? Get through it, get over it, like do whatever you need to do, but you have to show up with your best self. Believe in yourself. First, it takes a team. If you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to take the whole team along with you, you go together, right? The second E, encourage others, support others along the way. It's a journey. It's not a destination. We're all in this together. I have my hangups. You have your hangups. Everyone is struggling with something. So encourage each other, support each other. The S in my best acronym is set goals. I cannot overemphasize this enough. Set goals and follow through. Write them down and be smart about them and follow through. Be obsessed with your goals, whatever they are, and they should probably scare you. And last of all, be true to yourself. So that's what I would say. Someone coming in, even if I'm interviewing or I'm interacting with someone, I look for that. So again, best, believe in yourself. That's the B. E, encourage and support others along the way. S, set goals and follow through. T, be true to thine own self, be true. Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Omar. Appreciate it. That's another acronym that we're going to post. Tech, best, and believe. There we go. Brian?
Happy to give it a shot and go next. I think for the what we do and what I do for the team is really about creating that trust. Similar to Umar mentioned about safe space. Like, if you want people to bring their best selves and most authentic selves to work, you as a leader need to make sure you create an environment where they have the opportunity to do that and they feel comfortable doing that. And that's not just physical space, obviously. It's being able to encourage people to share their opinions, even if they have an opinion that's not popular or it's not what your opinion is. And I think the more teams can have open, honest discussions about the ways to approach a problem or even definition of the problem, the more cohesive they are, the more you get conviction on what we all agree to, or what the team will eventually all agree to as the path forward. Like, I try not to have an organization that just does things because Brian said, or my boss said so. Like, we want to go and execute on a plan. We all really need to believe in it, and that's the right thing to do. Because I think the why is just as important as the outcome. Then I guess for the community aspect, like I think similar. Like, I just try to be humble and open and consider all perspectives, both within the teams I work with and also out in the community, and try to be involved when I can, when I have time that's outside of my family life, to support and encourage others within industry and there's some other passions that I have that are nonprofit in those areas as well. And just trying to give back. I think we're truly blessed to be in such a phenomenal time to be alive in such an interesting time of the world where the technology is growing so fast, has so much promise, and how do we share that with others that don't get to have the opportunities that we have? And anything I can do to help support those in the community is, I think, is a bonus.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate it. And I think your last mention reminded me of a sentence that a colleague once told me. He told me one time, somebody made a bet on you when you were younger in your career, and look at what you have achieved. Who have you bet on lately? And I think that resonated big time. And now everywhere I go, and when I'm coaching and mentoring, or people reaching out to say, hey, can we have a conversation? I'm sort of at this fork in the road with my career. I remember somebody had made a bet on you in the past. Who are you betting on today? And I open my door and calendar to have that conversation. Great, Professor White, would like to hear from you. And then I would like to hear from our one and only Dr. Nida Davis. She is a super talented professional in cybersecurity and IT, and I'm sure she has a rich journey that she could share with us.
Yes. So I'm opening up for Ms. Davis. I'm opening up for her. I'm an opening act. Yeah. So about what you was talking about, the leaders, right? I think this is that sometimes as leaders, right, we have people, we have staff, and they're good staff too, and they do the job and they do it well. So you don't really have to say anything, right? Because my staff is doing it well. I think in this instance, for diversity to work, I think the executives do have to say anything, do have to start speaking. It sounds better when it comes from Jeff Bezos saying that we want women and we want Blacks and we want, minorities and, the LGBT, I forgot that, I don't want to mess it up, but we want that community involved in our employee pool. It sounds better when it comes from them. Even though he has people in place working it out, the numbers are rising, it still sounds good coming from the executive teams, right? So that's one thing, to be more visible and to talk about this issue and let people know that it's just not a policy or something that was implemented in your company, right? I think another thing too is to have more reach out, but more on a more productive, like starting reaching out in the schools, start to reach out in the the workforce, start reaching out in there and offering free trainings, do seminars and stuff, the same seminars and stuff we do for big conferences, do it in, Omar called it underrepresented areas, right? Do it there, right? Show, what, like for example, Microsoft, show what Microsoft does and what they have to offer and what innovative things are being done, so people could say, wow, because, to be frank, I don't see advertisements in certain neighborhoods about technology. You wouldn't even know technology exists. You don't see Dell, you don't see HP, you don't see none in these places. So, there's a reason why certain people don't get into technology. They're not really introduced into it, right? And then why are not people coming to your company? Because, we want to be where we feel we fit in, right? If I walk into a company and I don't feel like I belong, then I'm not going to stay. That's just the bottom line. So it's twofold. It's one, hiring diversity, but also making them feel they belong. And I guess that's the I part in DEI, right? The inclusion, making them feel like they belong, not that they was just a hire, sometimes a hire just to fit a number or fit a policy, right? That, you know, you really want culture, you really want them here, you really celebrate difference, right?
Sorry, Professor White, I can support your comment with actually data. I just received our engagement survey within the organization, and we have seen up to 16% improvement in the responses that says, I feel included in the organization. And the way we did it in the last couple of years is exactly what you're saying. As leaders, we showed up. As leaders, we made sure that we review every job offer to make sure that the person who's hiring had a pipeline of diverse talent, had a diverse panel, made sure the questions are set up the right way. And then when they presented us with the finalist, there was at least one diverse candidate in the finalist. If not, they go back to the drawing board and change their approach. And that's, to your point, the leaders have to show up, actions speak louder than words, and that's how you change culture. So I appreciate that. Dr. Nida Davis, would love to hear about your journey, any insights on, you know, how do you create an inclusive environment, any challenges that you have faced and was able to overcome.
Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for an amazing insight into what it takes to be where we are at today as leaders in this space. I would say that, like, really it's very important for everybody here today is don't think of yourself as an island. We're not an island. We are a community, and there's a lot of good people that are willing to be your mentors, your coach, to help you. I have had many people who opened doors for me, just like Gada. They placed the bet on me, and I stepped in and I stepped up for the challenge. Sometimes I was like reluctant, and I'm like, no, not me. Why me? I'm not good for this role, and I doubted my own capabilities. And I did, you know, sometimes I also was very cognizant about, well, maybe others will think I'm a token. And that bothered me a lot. You know, they call it the imposter syndrome. We face that. We challenge ourselves to come and bring our best selves so that we are not a token. We are at the table. We're smart enough. We are capable. If we don't know it, we learn it. We're very smart people. Cyversity as an organization, I remember when we started with just 1 or 2 chapters, and now we have 10 chapters nationally. We have leaders from all over the United States coming to help us from all walks of life. I call on you to just join a Cyversity-like organization or Cyversity itself. Trust yourself and just believe in yourself. So.
Thank you, Nida. I appreciate it. And yes, Nida had taken a lot of chances and bets on herself, and look at what she achieved. So thank you for creating this community and bringing us together. I think we're at the point where we can open it up for some Q&A. Dr. Nida Davis, would you like to facilitate us there?
Definitely.
Umar, sorry, you were going to say something.
Omar?
Nope, I jumped in where I shouldn't have. Dr. Davis.
Go ahead. Please.
No, I was just reading there's a question here from Karen. Her question is, as a leader, can you point to successful approaches that you used when mentoring underrepresented groups? I'm going to take my poetic license here and change it from minorities to underrepresented groups and women of color. I have personally, one of the things I do when I mentor people is the very first rule that I have is, this is yours. You do whatever you want to do with it, but you're not going to waste my time, right? Put it nicely or more diplomatically is the responsibility is yours. You take ownership of it. Don't show up to a mentoring session. I don't want to talk to you about your dog, your cat, or what's happening. You have to come to this session with a specific thing that we are going to work on. So that's the first thing. People have to hold themselves accountable. You have to hold them accountable. Otherwise, the session goes nowhere. That's the first thing. The second thing I think is, as someone who is mentoring someone, you always try to go one step further and be an advocate for the person. So you understand, you start having these conversations with folks, you know their skill set, you know their strengths, you know their areas of opportunities for growth. But you're sitting in some leadership meetings and a position may come up, right? You should, as a mentor, it's your responsibility to say, hey, this is, here's someone, I've worked with them, I have a good idea, let's give them a shot, right? Give them an opportunity. I did this in my last role. I was mentoring someone and he had the opportunity to replace me as I left. He chose not to. Another mentee was replaced, right? I was working with her. She was in Europe somewhere, I think in Spain, and we worked. I had an opportunity to pull her in the team as sort of we called it a secondment. So she just came in and she was working 20% of her time. I was exiting the organization and I recommended her because my first choice. So I think long story medium is you try to create opportunity. You get to know folks, hold them accountable, create areas of opportunity for them, and then continue to find ways to pull them in to the organization or to the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Umar.
Wonderful.
Gada, thank you so much for moderating the panel. And we have a whole number of questions. So I'd like to give an opportunity for all of you, including you, Gada, to answer this question. What are the successful approaches that you have practiced in mentoring and coaching women and underrepresented minorities? So I'll turn it back to you, Gada.
I think my approach is very similar to Umar. If a person approaches and says, "Can you mentor me?" The first answer is yes. What are you trying to achieve? And if the person says, "I have no idea," then we have a first conversation and sort of explain what mentorship is all about. And it's really about the person owning that relationship and owning sort of the questions and things that they need help with. And when they show that ownership, then the relationship becomes much more smoother. And then to Umar's point, you become the sponsor. You're wearing their T-shirt because you have visibility into conversations and opportunities that may not necessarily show up in the more standard way through a job requisition, because some opportunities are small assignments that will teach a person a skill. And by knowing that person and the area for development for that person through that mentoring relationship, assign them those opportunities by sort of championing their name, sponsoring their name, putting their name at the table, and then coaching them through that experience, because they're going to learn, stumble, wonder how to handle those situations and offer them that support. So it's an investment. And that's why it's really important that the mentee comes in investing also, because if we're investing time, the other person needs to invest the same amount of energy and time to get the value from it.
Thank you, Gada. Roger, Brian, would you like to comment on your approaches for mentoring? Roger?
Yeah, one thing I noticed in mentoring, and Dr. Davis, that we, me and you, we do mentoring together, and right. And one thing I noticed is that people don't even know what that is. Right? I mean, when have you ever heard mentoring when you was going to school or anything, right? So people don't really know what mentoring is and what level needs and what commitment they need. So I level set that first, right? Let's talk about what mentoring is. Maybe you don't need a mentor. Maybe you just need a sponsor, like Umar said. Maybe you just want somebody to, advocate for you, right? Or maybe you need a coach. You need more than a mentor, right? You need someone to sit with you and go through things. I level set that, see where they at, and then tell them the rules of engagement, right? Like Umar's, you don't want to waste your time, right? So I lay that out. This is what I expect from you. And this is what you can get from me, right? And then we level set that, and then we move forward that way. And I found it to be a lot more successful because, I realized people don't really know. People never had a mentor or never heard, they might have had mentors, but never heard that word mentor. And now that has actually became a discipline, right? Mentor is like a discipline now, right? It's like a science, right? So it's even more we explain it, right?
Thank you, Roger. I'm going to shift the dynamic a little bit because we're getting more questions and we have half hour. So this question is for you, Brian. It's coming from a student who is entering into cybersecurity, and they would like to hear from you on your first job and how did you enter into IT and into cyber. Tell us a little bit about how did you break into the field and what did you do to just begin the journey?
Yeah, thank you. I graduated school not in the computer industry at all. Again, had no intention of going into the computer industry, but opportunities continued to present itself. And then I think, after a couple years of just doing general computer stuff, computer work, I honed in on security as an interesting area and decided that that's what I wanted to do. I think you even saw an early kind of episode of, they were doing a post review of Kevin Mitnick and his infamous hack into what then was very industry leading and kind of eye-opening, and that I think really it gave me a clear direction and gave me a goal of what I wanted to do. And I also recognize it's a new industry that's sprouting and I want to be part of that. So, the reason why I mentioned that is it gave me a clear focus, clear objective of what I wanted to do. And then after figuring that out and doing that soul searching, it really became a journey on learning and being consuming as much content in this area that so I could come up to speed, and every opportunity that I could find to get my hands on, trying it, practicing it, working at home and in off hours, hands-on learning as well, getting together with groups and talking to them about security and what was happening with it. I just really immersed myself into the security area. And by word of mouth, I started getting opportunities. And one of them was with the company I was at, and moved me into an area where I got to work on new tech, which was at the time firewalls, like this whole new concept that came out. And then after doing that for a couple of months, at an industry event, I ran into an individual that would then become my future boss at PricewaterhouseCoopers. And he was starting a whole new team focused on cybersecurity and pen testing. And he loved that I was a self-starter and had passion and was doing things on my own and learning. And he hired me pretty much on the spot. So I guess my advice on this is if you try to get clarity on what you want to do, get focused on it. And if the more specific you can be, probably the better. And then really take the initiative, look for all those opportunities to not only educate yourself, but also participate and you can get experience, even if the experience is side jobs and labs, or doing prototypes by yourself. Like all that stands out, especially to hiring managers.
Thank you, Brian, so much. Very insightful. The second question is for you, Professor, and it resonates with me. It's a person in an entry level in cyberspace, and they got laid off. What advice do you have for them on visibility and being able to compete with this 300,000 folks are laid off too, and there's a lot of expertise in the field? What can they do to differentiate themselves with less experience and compete for the job?
Oh, so they have less experience?
Yeah, entry level cyberspace and the entry level, and they got laid off. Yeah.
Oh, entry level. Okay, so a couple of things, when I teach career, and I'm actually having a series on LinkedIn that we go over this. I call it Zero to My First Cyber Paycheck. One of the things is to be realistic about your skills. I think people are kind of foggy or confused on what their skills are, right? For good or bad, right? Some people underestimate their skills. Some people overestimate their skills. But I think that, this is not taught to have a skill matrix. Sit down and assess yourself. We're cybersecurity, right? Use the cybersecurity tools against yourself. Assess yourself, audit yourself, right? And see what skills you really have. So that way, when you go against a job, you could truly match it, right? Another one is to, one thing that, and everybody in this panel knows because we possess this, passion. Passion is a big part of why everybody here on the panel, I know, we have interviewed and hired people, and passion is, you can have the perfect candidate, but if they're missing that passion, it's, it's kind of iffy. But the same on the other side, you have a candidate he's okay, he could get the job done, he's not perfect, but he has the passion, and you could feel that passion, and you will hire that person and work with that person, right? So passion sometimes is not taught. Like, you need passion. If you're not passionate in this, okay, that's cool. I mean, you could do it, it's your life. But in here, in cybersecurity, another reason why I like this is so many different opportunities. You could find what fits your personality. In cybersecurity, I found what fit my personality. So if you're an introvert, there are jobs for introverts, which is amazing, right? There's jobs for every kind of personality in cybersecurity. Absolutely. So once you find that person, that thing fits you, you have passion, and that passion shows, and that passion helps. Sometimes people just are doing it just to do it, and you could feel that. You could feel people really don't want to be here, really don't want to do this job. They're just doing it for either financial reasons or whatever, right? So that sometimes will give you an edge over people, right? That passion. Absolutely. Right? Like here, Cyversity, right? You're part of an organization of cybersecurity professionals. You volunteer for this organization. That talks a lot. That gives you a lot of weight over every other candidate that has the same skills you have, right?
Thank you so much. So yes, even though maybe you see all these postings of 3-5 years worth of experience, apply to all of them, demonstrate your passion, pursue your passion, and connect with your network. Thank you so much, Professor. Next question is for you, Gada, and this is an interesting one. It says, I have a lot of goals, and one of them is to get into a very good position in cybersecurity. However, I'm quite lazy. To combat this, I remember this phrase, work harder, not smarter. Is this a good idea? And how can I follow this as a lazy person? What do you recommend for somebody who wants to achieve, but they don't really, you know, have, the work hard? They are always willing to improve themselves, but it's the work harder is not like resonating. What advice do you give people who are not who are lazy to achieve their goals?
So I look at sort of the entry into the workforce as a journey. So when you walk into an organization as a brand new person that nobody knows, you might need to work harder and more because you're trying to prove and show up and tell people who you are and show people who you are. And as soon as you get to a point where now you understand the organization understands you. I agree with Professor White. There are different roles in the organization that fits different kinds of personalities. Now, I have to be very, very honest with all of you, a little bit of a dose of reality. When leaders see a person who is lazy, that is not a good scene. No matter how smart you are, if the leader gives you an assignment and because you are lazy, you missed the deadline, do not complete the assignment and say, sorry, I missed it. That is a performance issue. That's not a laziness issue. That's not a smartness issue. That is a performance issue because as a leader, I'm leaning and relying on you to get something done because somebody else is waiting for me to get something done. And I need your piece to assemble it with my piece to make the Lego blocks come together into the perfect outcome. So, I think you want to be careful about being lazy and not performing your job, because if your laziness ends up in you not performing your job, you're going to lose your job. So you want to change your mindset a little bit. You want to enter with full force, identify your niche, set goals and achieve the goals. I think that's very important. Your goals may be less ambitious than somebody else who is, type A personality, like a lot of us here on this call, high achievers. We're going to set goals at where we work not 100%, but work 125%. Again, calibrate your goals based on your abilities and your willingness to contribute, and then manage expectations. Tell your manager, this is what I can do, this is how much I can contribute. But be careful about your laziness, resulting in lack of performance, because that is not going to be a long-term employment opportunity for you.
Thank you, Gada. You can see that Gada is a pretty tough cookie. So, and the correction that came from the person is like, work smarter, not harder, and the smart and the hard kind of. So that it's really important.
Work smarter, not harder is very, very welcomed.
Yeah, both are great, and you have to excel. All right, this question is for you, Omar. Can you provide any suggestions on how to stand out in a competitive job market, especially when you are pivoting from a completely different area, from a technology? How do you suggest showcasing your enthusiasm, your talent, your transferable skills that may come from a different domain?
Yeah, so I'm going to go back to the question you asked Brian, right? Because a lot of what Brian and Dr. White said and Gada said was answered. This question was answered there. So Brian, he didn't really say it, but one of the things that can help you stand out is network. That, as he was saying, I'm like, network, please say network, right? That's number one. Help you stand out. Go on LinkedIn, be visible, attend sessions like these and contribute, right? So networking is not just, hey, here's my card. How can, here's my card. Tell me about yourself. How can I help you? Sometimes you kind of turn it around and not always with your hands like that, but sometimes you're giving, right? So the upper hand usually better than the lower hand. So give. offer your services. Hey, I'm passionate about writing stuff. Perhaps I could help you write like a security awareness training or something, right? And then Dr. Roger White, he talked about, you know, the opposite of imposter syndrome, right? Be realistic. Over 60% of people think they're better than average, right? So I don't know how that math works, but there's a thing called the Dunning-Kruger effect, where you actually, and I think I may suffer from this, but sometimes, you know, reality is not as, you know, your view of reality may be a little bit like colored in roses. So be humble, continually learn. So that's one. So be humble. So first, network, be humble. The third thing is, you know, the passion. We talked about when I used to hire people, there are three things I looked for. The first was passion. And what does passion mean? We talk about passion, passion, passion. So you want to get into cybersecurity? Okay, so tell me about your home network. Do you have like, can you you know, VPN into your house when that was a thing, right? Or do you have like two-factor authentication? What does your, tell me about your, do you have like a Cisco router, right? Are you playing, do you have a lab at home? You're going to look different from the other candidate who's like, oh yeah, I went to school and I got a whole bunch of certifications, right? So demonstrate your passion through doing things that are relevant to your work, and use your home as a lab. Well, use a laptop on a segregated network at home, all right, and play with it. Yeah, if you come and you as a hiring manager, you tell me that, right? And continually learn. Dedicate at least an hour a day. If you can't do an hour, 30 minutes a day to watch a YouTube video, read a book, watch a documentary, but educate yourself, stay current. You do those things, by default, you're going to stand out, because when you talk, stuff is just going to come out of your mouth. Oh, right. So network, be humble, educate yourself, demonstrate your passion.
Thank you so much. All great ideas. This one is for you, Professor. Somebody who is a sophomore heard that studying cybersecurity upfront is a bad idea, and it's better to study computer science and then specialize or have a minor in cybersecurity. What are your thoughts on, you know, the pros and cons of studying cyber versus computer science?
Okay, well, that's two different disciplines, actually, right? So that's like saying me study to be a doctor, so you be a good lawyer, right? You know, there's two different disciplines. I don't see how they connect really, but no, cybersecurity is its own discipline. It's its own science, right? And focus on that. If you want to get into cybersecurity, focus on that. Trust me, there will be a lot of material, a lot of sleepless nights studying that, right? Alone. I don't think you have to study 5 other things to achieve one thing, right? You could focus on cybersecurity. So I don't really agree with that. And I come from the university space as computer science. I don't see how that correlates or connects somehow. After you spend 4 years in computer science, you're not going to be either any way closer to cybersecurity than you was when you started, right? So.
Thank you so much. Great insight. This one's for you, Brian. Well, we have somebody who has 20 years of experience in IT. They have the passion, the networking, they have everything, but they're still having a really difficult time breaking into cyber and kind of achieving their goals. What do you recommend for somebody who has been in the field for that long of a time and are just not able to make it through?
In this situation, and we've met a number of people that have done this and made the transition from general, IT or a specific area of IT and moved it into cyber. I think understanding it, is there a specific area in the cyber area that you want to focus on, and so I guess I would start there, is like pick something specific, and then look for opportunities that exist today. And while you may not be, if you don't feel like you're qualified yet, you still reach out to those individuals if you can, and hiring managers, or ask to be introduced to hiring managers, and then ask them, like, ask people that hire for those positions that you're interested in, what would it take? How can I be of interest? How can I, what would you recommend for training or development, or is it a specific class? So, again, I think learning a lot, or being inquisitive and trying to learn what it would take to get there. And then I think some of what others have already said, like, be honest with yourself about where your skills are, where your gaps, and where you need to come up to speed. And as Umar said, right, leverage the network to identify those people that can help. And LinkedIn is a wonderful tool. Like, searching on LinkedIn, you can find a lot of positions and those hiring managers fairly quickly.
Thank you so much, Brian. So we're coming, this was an amazing, I thought 90 minutes was gonna be, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? And we're 7 minutes from closing. So great panel, great conversations. I would like to thank everybody who participated today, and the audience, all of you. And I'd like to give an opportunity back for closing comments from our leaders, to just have some words of encouragement, inspiration, particularly for us as minority, underrepresented women, and minorities in the cybersecurity space. Kind of just like one statement of inspiration that you would like to give us and part the session today with, for us to take to heart and kind of think about after we close out today. So I'm gonna start with you, Omar, and then before you answer, somebody wants to know, repeat the author of the Principles of Leadership. Could you please tell us who's the author and give us your closing comment?
Sure, I think Gada dropped it in the chat, but it's Ray Dalio, and he has principles about life, about leather, but very good series. Anyway, this is a tough one, and I know I'm a very long-winded person, so I'll try to keep it very short. Believe in yourself. And I'll stop there because I'm going to go on and on. But I would just say, believe in yourself. Please. You owe it to yourself.
Thank you. Gada.
I'm going to share my mantra throughout my whole life. If you dream it, you can achieve it. Don't stop. Don't limit your dreams. And it may take a while. I mean, I wanted to be CIO a long time ago. It took a while, but I got here. So don't give up on your dream.
Thank you. Roger.
Community, right? Join a community like Cyversity, and other organizations. Don't do this yourself. It is too hard. It is, you could still make it by yourself. We have, right? We didn't have Cyversity when right, Umar, right, Brian? We didn't have Cyversity. We had to figure it out ourselves. But now today, there's communities that actually help you and do a good job of it. Have resources to help you, so you don't have to spend wasted time, right? Get with a community, get with a mentor, right? So that way you go down the right path. Yeah, there's two ways to get to point A. One is straight and one is going around in a circle. You eventually get to point A, right? But you want to be with a community and a mentor that'll get you on the right path straight, right? So that's my...
Absolutely. Community and networking, passion, believe in yourself. And Brian, you get to have the last words for inspiration.
Yeah, mine's similar. Like, know what you want, be clear about your intentions, and don't let an opportunity pass you by. Like, they're out there. Just it takes them a matter of time, effort, energy to really find them and take advantage of them, like and go after them.
Thank you so much, Brian. With that, we are 3 minutes away from closing. I want to thank all of you today, Gada, Roger, Umar, and Brian. Thank you so much for an engaging conversation and for helping and supporting our community. I also want to thank everybody who showed up today. I hope this was a good use of your time, and I look forward to having you at our future sessions, our community gatherings, and may you all thrive and prosper and achieve your full potential. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.